that was it. That was it. Yeah.
Was collapsing.
Yeah.
With the loss of major sections of the original interviews by sources and beings unknown, we return now in the summer to reshoot the lost interviews with Rauni-Kilde. Rauni's books are now out of print, but here are some of them as we return to soon. We start with an important conference in Moscow held just before the breakup of the Soviet Union, where top US military were in attendance.
We are here today because certain things happened since the last interview, namely that certain information that you imparted the first time was somehow deleted. So could you go over that again about specifically where you were at the conference in Moscow and things like that, those sort of events, meeting other people?
Yes, it was interesting to find out what parts of the interview were deleted, which to me show that those are the parts that people should not know. Big Brother doesn't want that people know about space and real findings in space. This Moscow conference was opened by General Popovich, a cosmonaut, and Dr. Ashasa was the chairman, and I did not know at that time that he was also chief of Navy intelligence of the Soviet Union. This standard gives UFO conferences to general public, which was incredible in my mind. At the end...
So this was open to the general public
yes,
in Moscow as well?
Yes, but we were only 4 from the West. They were all over from the Soviet Union at that time. And those from the West, there was an American general, Army's intelligence chief, can you imagine? And his...
Can you name him?
Yes, General Albert Stubblebine, and his now wife, psychiatrist Rima Leibov, and Victoria, who was a journalist and now married to Colonel John Alexander, who is very, very knowledgeable about space, UFOs and mind control. And at the end of the conference, I was asked if I would like to see something very specific, and I couldn't understand what. I said, sure, what do you want to show me? And they took me to the cellar of this institute, and it was behind so thick iron doors, several of them, 3, 4, I recall, and I thought, what is this? This is like going to a secret vault of the bank. And there was a huge hall full of UFO pictures from all the walls, in all the walls, and then a huge map of the Soviet Union with pins. And I stopped immediately and said, what are these? They ignored my question. I thought that they could have been landing sites of UFOs. But anyway, what they specifically wanted me to see was a story of Anatoly Malchev. And I was so surprised because I have lectured of Anatoly Malchev in my previous lectures, because this happened to him in 1975.
So who is she exactly? Anatoly?
Well, he was a woodworker in the woods, and all of a sudden a UFO landed next to him. And humanoids came out and asked him for a ride, to come along. And he was courageous, and he went along. And then they were flying for some time, and they passed the moon. And on the other side of the moon, the dark side so-called, of the moon, he saw lights. And he asked, what are these? So he was told there are bases on the dark side of the moon. And then they flew maybe 2 hours or something, and they landed on a planet. And when he got out, he got a shock of his life, because the people who came to greet him and meet him were his dead relatives and friends, who were in perfect shape and beautiful and, in perfect health. And this was deleted. So I thought that's very interesting, because that shows something about life on planet Earth. It showed to me, at least, that we're all one. ETs, the dead, which we call the dead, the energy of the dead, is not dead, but just continues.
Were they
and us.
Their souls, perhaps? Or
well, you can call them. I mean, I would use rather a not religious term like soul. I would say energy bodies. We are light energy, beings of light. And that was there. It was not in the physical, even it looked exactly like the physical in the last reincarnation. And if somebody was blind or deaf or had an amputated arm, they were whole. Because all these are in the physical body, they are not in the light body. Your light body cannot have any defects. And that maybe explains a medical phenomena of a so-called phantom touch. You know, if somebody has amputated your arm, so you still feel the pain in your fingers, and you don't have physical fingers.
And Dr. Harry Oldfield in England or in Wales has actually shown video of if the person thinks of their arm, it appears.
Oh, really?
On camera.
That I have never seen.
Yes.
But there's a lot between the earth and the skies that we don't know about.
So what else happened at this conference, and were you able to debate or discuss with the other people that were there?
Well, I discussed. I didn't debate because I don't speak Russian, and I had a lady, a radio engineer, who was also a journalist of Anomalia magazine in Leningrad at that time, and I asked her to come and sit next to me and interpret a little bit. But next day she just vanished, and like I said in the previous interview, 2 males came next to me, and one was a colonel, one was a general. And after that I was surveilled 24 hours, I'm sure. But it was interesting that after all this, they still asked me to come and see this hall. Why did they want to show it to me? And I asked the American lady who was there last year in an American UFO conference, did they invite you too? Because I was alone with them. And she said, no. Why did they invite me?
So you were alone with the Russians in this room?
Yes.
So Stubbeldine...
No, they went. They
weren't brought in?
And like I found out, they were not even invited. Interesting. I think the reason may be that I had lectured of Anatoly Malchev. And of course they know everything. Secret services in the US and Russia, they know everything.
So,
and they wanted to show me that, yeah, you're really dealing with something which is real. It's not just a story.
So were you able to talk to the Americans at all?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So with conversation,
no,
how were they?
I did not talk about this because this was at the end of the conference, yes. and we left.
But how did such a senior, high-ranking American group be in Moscow? This is before the Soviet Union broke up.
Yes,
remember?
It was just about breaking up.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was through Rima Leibo I found out about this conference. So it seems to me that Russia and US have very, very much in common with the space exploration, and it's only we, usual people, who don't know it, because they act as if they would be, you know, confronting each other. No, they're big pals, you know, like...
But more importantly, on this level of ufology.
That's right, exactly. Because, of course, the idea in the 50s was that it could be a threat to planet Earth. Now they all know, just as well Russians as Americans, that there is no threat, absolutely none. And one interesting thing was that came out of the conference, that the Russians have lost many planes and pilots because of fightings with UFOs, and it's always we, Earth people, who attack. But of course their technology is maybe thousands of years ahead of us, so we always lose. And now it was stated there in the conference that now it's an order in Russia not to attack, because we always lose. And why should they lose their pilots and planes? So they know that they better let them be alone. But it came out also that there are, of course, 2 dimensions to the UFO question. A member of Soviet Academy of Sciences stated that, of course, it's a mechanical one. I mean, it is a mechanical device that flies like a plane. But then there is the pilots, the humanoids, and then that comes to the consciousness of the pilot and the consciousness of human beings. Now that seems to go together. And they also, which I think is one of the worst things that they don't want people to know, is time travel. They come from our future. And they can also go back. I mean, there's a technology even for us, but it has taken many, many lives when they have been doing experimentations with Monta project in the States, for instance. Young children especially, they die with these experiments. But when you think that they come from our future, so you could also state that we see our own future. Because a man is a mind, not a body, and we're multi-dimensional. which is something which is very hard for people to understand. But if you think that in your dreams you are also in another frequency, and in your dreams you can go wherever, and we think that dreams are just a product of stress or your experiences and a product of your brain activity, because today's medicine still holds on to the old paradigm that it's your brain that thinks, it's your brain that is the thing. It isn't. It's like a projector. Film is much more important than the projector, because projector can go kaput, you know, or something goes wrong. So, okay, you take the film and put it into a new projector, and it continues. That's exactly how a human being should be thought of. A human being is a consciousness, absolutely a consciousness, and can travel anywhere in the universe. And especially as proof, I would say that US military is training special officers into out-of-body experiences for espionage.
Yes, the remote viewing, that's why Alexander
exactly,
was there.
Exactly.
Yes.
And also for space travel, because space travel is not that dangerous when you're out of your body in an energy form than if you are in a spaceship, which can go, like we have now read, I just have to laugh, that their toilets go kaput or something like that. Yeah. That's the big news. But what really happens in space, that is never talked about, because NASA is a military, not a civilian institution like we think. And of course their secret astronauts and their secret programs to other planets, Mars, etc., and even further, are never revealed. I think it takes about 50 years before they really... Well, of course, hacking into somebody's computer is criminal.
Yes,
so in that respect, but also it was so sensitive information that he gave that added to his destiny in a way. But I'm happy he did that. That should be announced more and more, even if people are harassed when they come out with this. I know it from my own experience. I mean, there are very few days in the whole year that I'm not harassed by neighbors or by somebody else. And I've been always harassed when I have given an interview or a lecture or written an article or written a book or whatever. Then it really comes back, like, you know, revenge.
So since the last interview, you were wearing certain things and they...
Yes, I just changed clothes this morning, and I was looking at, I thought maybe I should have the same clothes on, but all of a sudden the shirt that I had on with little bricks gone. I bought it in the States, so I was really mad that it's gone. The same thing happened when I came from a non-lethal weapons conference in Germany. In 3 days, some Norwegians came in and made an interview, which is on internet, in insynsspeilet.no. And the very nice violet jacket that I had, a silk jacket, I loved it. It was very good, and the color was, you know, transformation type. That was gone the next day. So always something is gone, and every time I come home I see, what have they taken now? It's usually small things, but it's always emotional things. And the funny thing is, really, that what I concentrate myself on, like I had a old compass from my father. I took it from the drawer and looked. Remembered I was 15 when I got it, an old compass, still working fine. I put it back into the drawer. In a few days I took it again, was gone. Another thing...
So do you think that you've got company, invisible company?
I don't think so. I don't think those were dematerializations, but of course I can't prove it. I think it was somebody coming in. Anyway, it's somebody who sees with my eyes and hears with my ears, and they can have a wall-through-wall radar in the next house if they want to. And every time I go out, somebody bangs the doors, or, you know, surveillance. And also, when I looked at some porcelain thing with lobster signs, oh, I'm glad they haven't taken this. Next day I saw it was gone. So they always react to the things that I concentrate on. I look at a photograph, well, I'm glad this I still have, it's gone. So either they are using this technology of remote viewing, mind control, whatever, through the satellites, or then it is physical, somebody is following with a radar through the walls. And of course that is always in a neighboring house. Oh yeah, they know. They even know your thoughts. And faster than we do, as I've mentioned. Our brain is very, very slow. Well, I've been dealing with, in the conferences, with remote viewers, talk to them. One of the trainers is John Alexander at Monroe Institute. I heard that from from an acquaintance of mine who was working at the Monroe Institute in Virginia, USA, and there they have layers of, well, it was, I think, three stores down in cellars, and it was for maybe a catastrophe that they would be safe. And the people had to stay in a tiny little studio room with a bed and a little table, and they got things over their ears, and then the leader, whether it was John Alexander or somebody else, because he was dealing with the military personnel, but then there are civilian courses too.
Yes.
So the leader takes a mic, and all those in their cells hear it, and it starts with the waves of the Pacific. So you get really relaxed, and then it is an order, go. And where do you go? That is, you get out of your body, and you go to a Pacific island, for instance. It's a military base. It's always military, of course,
Yeah.
because that's what they're interested in seeing. And then you go around, hovering around, you see everything, and come back and report. You can go to other planets, you can experience things, you can also go to the frequency of your dead relatives, and you can see them and talk to them. Well, I think it is, because Hollywood movies are often based on reality. Think of, well, movies like Control Factor.
Yeah.
From 2003, it shows exactly how mind control is done. It's old-fashioned technology, of course. They don't show today's technology. You know, they screw your neck with a device, but you don't need to, because the smallest ones are 2 micromilli. So you know,
Yeah.
it's old technology. But the idea is that they microchip you, and after that they control you totally.
How does one try to combat this kind of mind control?
I think number one is awareness. You have to know that the technology exists, and it's nothing to do with pathology or you know, that you're not crazy or whatever. But there's a good exercise. I just read it from a German doctor, that you can sort of, for just 1 minute, do certain exercises like this for 20 seconds. You sort of disassociate. Then
Yes.
do the same with your ears for 20 seconds, and then do this 2-3 times a day. I couldn't understand how that could work, but I've done it, and it does work. It does work. So that's one thing that you can do.
Does this sort of subtly release tensions in the muscles of the,
Yeah,
of the brain?
that's right.
Does it
Yeah.
feed- or
That's
the
what
mind?
he seems to instruct. So at least that's something that you can try, and then you have to tell others, because even if they don't believe you, then somebody else tells them, somebody else, a 3rd, 4th, 5th person, then they start seeing that there's something terribly, terribly wrong with planet Earth today and the people who are on the top. Well, you can do it with many, many, many kinds of things, but I think the very usual one is with electromagnetic fields. You're being beamed at a certain frequency. And when that frequency hits you, they have certain frequencies for certain feelings. The feeling of touch, of eyes, of ears, whatever. They have each frequency.
What sort of frequencies are we talking about? Are we talking extra low frequencies? ELF?
Well, like some 25 hertz or 9 hertz or whatever.
Yeah.
And then another thing is they are using drugs. And for instance,
Is this in our food? I mean, we've heard of the fluoride debate for fluoride in water.
well, that's one way. I mean, putting into water and putting into your food all kinds of things that are not good for you, and they know it very well that they're not good for us. That affects also your brain activity and your psyche. But
that's involved with the food which the European Union are forcing on us. The types of
yeah,
chemicals.
well, Americans are mostly forcing it. You know, the American companies, but with gene-modified food and things like that, and we do not know, and nobody knows what's going to happen, because they experiment on long range, and we don't know what happens in a year or 20 years. Just like we don't know what happens, except we start knowing now what happens with mobile phones in 20 years. You know, they cause brain tumors and blindness and deafness and cancer and whatever. It's totally, totally known. But it's experimentation on a long range.
Do you think that those frequencies and those devices are specifically selected to test on us? Do you think they're changing the species, or trying to kill us or change us or whatever?
Well, at least they're making us very sick. And since the goal that I have read of the elite, if I can use that word, is to diminish our population on planet Earth by at least 2/3, maybe even 5 billion. So that's very, very
Can you
negative.
explore that more? I mean, we're facing this new disease which is coming out, the
Swine?
the swine flu.
Oh, that's just rubbish.
What's
I mean,
your-
that
what's
is
your-
really rubbish. You know, it's not the swine flu that's dangerous, it's the injections. Because it's supposedly, it's not only swine, but it is human virus mixed with swine virus, mixed with bird virus. And of course, behind the whole thing is to diminish world population, because it's very toxic, and to get milliards and milliards and milliards into the pockets of those who put them out. Rumsfeld is an owner also in one of the big drug companies. And since they want to diminish the population, so they start saying that children and pregnant women are the first ones. Eliminate the next generation.
So you've been trying to alert certain governments about this?
Not governments, but I have written information to Finland, because I don't think it's going to work. Because even if WHO...
It has been tried before in the late 70s with
Yes,
President Ford.
76 they had in the States the swine flu, and it was stopped, the injections, after 3 weeks, because so many people died or got Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is their neurology was destroyed. So now they're making a little adjustment and doing it the same. And before that, they have also made sure in the States that people don't get compensation for the damage in their health, because previously, 76, they had to pay big amounts. Like, you know, in the States their compensation is big when you destroy somebody's health. But now they have a law in the States that these companies are not liable, nothing in compensation, if the patient is killed or if the patient is sick for life. So they have really thought about it.
So they can poison us and kill us and get away with it scot-free.
That's right.
So how is this happening? How are so many governments allowing this to just happen?
Because they're not allowing it yet, because nobody has done anything yet. They are just having a scary program in the mass media. All mass media says, oh, it's going to be terrible. Now it's something, bang, bang, bang. It's a scary, scary, scary propaganda. And people get scared because they don't know. Now, WHO has ordered that, you know, everybody has to be by force injected. Previously, WHO did not have this ability to tell them to force any government, because it was only recommendations. But it was 97, 98, I recall, that they signed with 194, was it, states about that if there is a pandemic, you know, real serious pandemic, so then they give an order. Now, in the beginning already, in the beginning of June, WHO said pandemic 6, that's the highest. Now, go to any country in the world, people are not sick. There are not millions in swine influenza. So this was just done to force people and prepare the governments to give injections by force. But it's not going to work. I don't think Norway is going to do it.
So do you think the figures released by the World Health Organization are actually false? Or
of course they are. Of course. But you have to remember, why do they do this? Always remember who benefits. Who benefits? They have been forced, in my mind, to do this. And by whom? Big Pharma. Big Pharma, which is, you know, deals with the world population and the world money and all this. It's milliards.
So what's the ultimate strategy, do you think, that's happening with this? What's their target? What's their intent?
The target is to get rid of so many people as possible and to get as much money for them as possible. But I think they have calculated wrong this time, because already in the Bilderberg meeting, 14th and 15th of May this year, 2009, in Hellas, there was almost a split when they were discussing this. And I can well imagine that people normally, you know, attending, do not always agree with Mr. Kissinger's plan to eliminate a great deal of world population. And now, for instance, yesterday, the Finnish government made a decision, changed laws, which is very interesting, changed laws that swine influenza is not anymore on the list of being a dangerous, serious, contaminating disease. And that means that, of course, then people have to pay for themselves. It's a money question too. But in my mind, of course, this is a legal question for the lawyers. But in my mind, if something is not a dangerous, contaminations disease, you cannot be forced to take an injection, right? So I think they were very, very smart. Also, I just read that from the Folk Institute of Health in Norway, that director had said that there has never been many meaning to force people to take, but they can take an injection, and I hope nobody does, especially not children, especially not pregnant women, and actually nobody.
Where do you think the strategy of all these kind of things, the mind control and the involvement with kinds of ETs, is there an extraterrestrial element here?
A very good question, because of course...
In other words, how much in bed are the secret authorities in bed with the authorities?
There's a lot of disinformation, especially from the States. They claim that they have ETs in Area 51, and one specifically, a gentleman I know from UFO conferences stated that he has been sitting in the same table with an ET, and they put on a was it blue or white shirt on him so that he would look more human. I think that's just BS. But the contacts that exist are both physical and mental, and I think the mental contacts are much, much more important because they happen with just anybody. The physical contacts with the military, when there's a crushed UFO, and if they get alien bodies or if they get alive aliens like it has been claimed, and I don't doubt that that couldn't be true, so they get a lot of information. But it is not that aliens, so-called, would be dictating to us what we are doing. This is a free planet, and we have free will, and this is in my mind, it's also an experimentation planet, because they have, in some planets, humanoids, people, intelligence beings, that have kind of a group intelligence, and they have a lot of clones. And we are just starting, in my mind, to have human clones. Although in '77, I was told already at the TV in Utah, they have had a clone on TV. But of course, there's no difference in cloning a human and cloning an ape or cloning a sheep or whatever. It's the same technology. And easier than that, of course, is to microchip the human population, then they become biological robots. Oh, absolutely, absolutely, because the elite wants only the elite and slave class. They don't want the middle class, because middle class can, well, create a revolution.
Yes.
But slave class doesn't. And of course the elite just thinks that they are the ones who will have all the benefits and nobody else. I think David Icke has gone a little bit too far when he calls certain members of the British royal family, for instance, for lizards and whatever. I mean, in a way, if you think that man is a mind, not a body, and we're multidimensional, so a part of our energy could be in different dimensions at the same time, just as well in different planets. But to draw it into here and call people, you know, whatever, lizards or aliens, and no. Again, our energies are multidimensional, can come from different places at the same time.
What kind of space contacts have you had?
I've had previously all kinds, mostly psychological, in dreams or in hypnosis, but also physical. I remember I was at that time in Rovaniemi, chief medical officer, and I had a friend visiting me. She was an actress, a young actress.
Sorry, this is in Finland?
This is in Finland, at the Polar Circle. Young actress, who was about 78, I think, around that time. And I had met Andrei Puharich, who is now deceased, but he was
involved with Uri Geller and the Council.
That's right. Yeah. And I had dinner with him once when we were both lecturing at the University of Wisconsin about UFOs. And he invited for a dinner date, and then told me that he and Yuri fly with UFOs. And I looked at him and I said, look, you're a respectable medical doctor. How can you tell me stories like this? And he said, but this is absolutely true. And I did not understand to ask, was it physical or was it mental flying? But anyway, then I confronted him. I said, well, why don't you come and take me along? I'd love to come. And he says, well, where do you live?
By way of a joke? Or...
Yeah, in a way, I just, take me along. I'd love to fly. And then he asked all the details where I live, and I said it's next to a river, and there's a plane, so any plane could land if it comes like that. And he says I have to ask for permission. And I thought, why does he? And who does he ask for permission? I was stupid not asking it. I just thought, and then I forgot about it. And 2 months passed. I was back in Rovaniemi at home with this actress. And I was reading the booklet I had gotten just the same day, and it was called The First Contact. It was haiku poems, like Japanese poems. And the name was First Contact. And then I just drifted my glance outside. Oh my Lord, look at that. There was maybe 100 yards from us, 100 yards from the ground, there was a UFO. And I had said, just come, like, ha. And I went into total panic, and so she did too. And I prayed, I said, please don't come, because I realized that now I'm dealing with something that I have no control over, absolutely none, and I don't know what's going to happen. It was hovering there for 15 minutes, and then it just flew away.
Because maybe you didn't come out and say hello? And...
I didn't do anything but pray
hello,
that
Yuri, I'm here, let's
No, I did not do but pray, don't come. And we were both totally shocked, and after it left, then we said, no, it was the moon. The moon isn't 100 yards from me, 100 yards from the ground, come on. And we tried to make normal explanations, and
so
we couldn't.
What way? Was this at night time? Or?
It was evening, yeah, it was evening. Yeah. And the next morning I opened the papers, and that was a bigger shock, because, you could say that, okay, you just dreamt it or whatever. We were totally awake. No, it was 100 people who had called the police and called the newspaper and reported they had seen a phenomena of light or whatever, right there next to the river. Then they asked the commander-in-chief of Lapland Air Force, and he said it was a Soviet rocket, which stopped for 15 minutes to say, hello, Rauni, right? 4 years passed, there was a new commander at Lapland Air Force, and they asked about this incident again. And he said it was a flock of birds. I don't think that our standard, which is very, very internationally high, is that low in the Air Force. It was a straight lie, which they have to give. I have now found out that they have to say it's a flock of birds or planet Venus or whatever, Soyuz. They have to say that if they have had no permission to say that it was a UFO. And usually they never have permission. Then I talked also to the chief of the airport of Rovaniemi at that time. He's long ago retired, maybe even dead now, but he was a classmate of my mother. So that's why we started talking, and I asked him, have you ever seen? He said twice. Twice he's seen a UFO pass, whoomp, past the Rovaniemi airport. Isn't that interesting? Nobody has ever written about that. Well, I only have a couple, things that I want to stress very, very much. And that is number one, man is a mind, not a body, so we are energy. Number two, we cannot die. We can never die. Our body dies, yes, but we are not our body. And then we are absolutely not alone in the universe. And the question of ETs, humans, death, is one question.
That's
we're all one.
Important.
We're all one in the energy. And we can live in our future. They can come to our past. And there's absolutely no death. There's no time in the universe either.
Yeah, our perception of time is
completely wrong.
Yeah.
But we're here to learn. We're here for some reason, and one of the reasons is that, in my mind, this is a very negative planet, because we kill our own race. We eat our brothers, that is, meat of animals. And it's not only that we slaughter them, but we also hunt them. And when you or anybody has had a cat or a dog or a cow or whatever, horse, you absolutely know that there's a consciousness in them. They feel, they love, they hate, they're angry. And why would we be the only ones with consciousness on this planet. When our form is different from some other humanoid forms, different from dolphins, different from whales, but they all have consciousness. So we should start concentrating on the consciousness of people. And that way we would see that we're all one. We would not anymore have wars and killings and things like that. But before that, the elite who wants only power and money has to change. And it's up to every one of us to send them love and light, change. And that may be the biggest weapon we ever have. That is the power of our mind.
They did. Now we have the sun.